Rishaad Jerram is chief economist at the Bank of Singapore. He joins us to shed a bit more light on this. First of all, Rishaad, well, what is this initiative exactly?
Well, this is something they set up in the wake of the Asian financial crisis, when obviously several of the Asian economies really had problems in terms of access to foreign funding, and this was part of a structure to make sure it doesn't happen again.
So, as it develops, I mean, where are we with it? When they want to double the size of the fund, now, is it acting almost like, well, a rival to something like the IMF?
Yeah, I think it works essentially in parallel to the IMF. They're talking about $240 billion. Of course, any individual country wouldn't be able to draw all of that. If you were, say, Thailand, Indonesia, you'd be able to draw $20-odd billion. I think you've also got to look at it in relationship to the reserves. Of course, at the time of the Asian crisis, the reserves disappeared very quickly. But now Indonesia's got $100 billion of reserves, Thailand's got 170, Korea's got 300. So really it's not a large amount of money compared to the resources of the individual countries.
Has anybody ever used this fund or tapped it?
Well, no, that's one of the questions, really, because when there was the post-Lehman shock and Korea found itself in need of dollars, I went directly to the Fed and arranged a swap agreement with the US rather than coming and using the Chiang Mai initiative. So I think there are real questions as to whether it's going to be a big player in any future crisis in any case.
So how should we view this? Is this just another mechanism of goodwill in the region?
Yeah, I think you should view it as Asia gradually improving regional cooperation, and this is part of the architecture which is going to facilitate that. And you've seen free trade agreements, and I think this sort of is a complement to that general increase in cooperation.
I think there's something called AMRO here as well, which is well, including the ASEAN members, and I think it's a macroeconomic research office. Now, what does this represent? It seems like after the Asian financial crisis, there's a lot of talk about having a distinctly different approach to solving matters here. Is that what this is leaning towards?
Yeah, I think part of it is that the IMF in the region has a bit of a bad name after the solutions to the Asian financial crisis. I think also some of it is simply trying to spot the problems really before they become critical. So there is a sort of supervisory type of element to this to try to keep countries on the right track. Because there's no enforcement potential for it. So all you can really do is highlight the problems and hope that it produces some sort of reaction. So it doesn't really have any teeth, I think you'd have to say.
Okay, let's just also talk a little bit about what's happening generally in this part of the world and from a macroeconomic standpoint. Where are we in terms of China? Of course, everybody's saying we are going to see a slowdown. We'll probably see a little one, but really at the end of the day, does it really matter that much?
Well, I think people are worrying, to me, they're worrying too much about hard landing risks in China. I mean, of course, things have slowed down. That was the objective of the credit tightening we saw over the previous 2 years. But I think the crucial thing is that inflation has come off as well. You know, it was at 6.5% in July last year, pushing close to 3% now. So if they start to become uncomfortable by the degree of slowdown, there's plenty of policy response they have in order to make sure it doesn't become too nasty. And so I think from the point of view of the rest of the region, you can see that the external risks have diminished with stabilization in Europe and better growth in America. I think internally, inside the region, things are looking fairly comfortable. You're starting to get a pickup in growth again. So, to me, it looks as if the real point of tension was towards the end of last year, and I think things look much more stable at the moment.
Rishaad, thank you so much for joining us. Rishaad Jerram there from Bank of Singapore.